Welcome, everybody, to our August office hours. Looks like a smaller group here at the end of August. A lot of people still on vacation or not participating. So that's great. We'll have maybe a little more intimate group and can answer people's questions more. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But if you do want to raise your hand, go ahead and hit the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen to get your hand up. And Candace is going to keep our cue and tell us the order in which we're answering people's questions. So I'm not going to delay any longer. People who want to join us will keep joining us, but that way we'll have more opportunity to ask questions, to answer questions. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. And Marcella, Candace says you're first. Why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, Dr. Laura.
Everybody, I'm sorry, I should have done this. Wait 1 second, Marcella. Candace is, raise your hand, Candace, wave to people. Candace is right here, who's keeping our cue. And Candace is our head admin on our Success Path, also on the Peaceful Parent Happy Kids group, and also Heidi Whipple. Heidi, would you wave to everybody? Heidi is also one of our admins. So I just wanted you to see their faces to go with their names when you see them in the groups. Okay, Marcella, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'm just lowering the baby phone. It's very late here in Spain. My question is, right now I'm working with a mom, and her case is, well, she has 3 daughters, and one of her daughters has severe social anxiety. And at school, selective mutism. So she doesn't talk at all at school. And so they were working a lot with that. And actually, I recommended to her a few months ago that she should talk to a psychologist at least to see if there's any other issue with the daughter. But she confirmed that it's anxiety. So yeah, I'm working now with this mom, and right now what I'm mostly focusing on is the mom's anxiety, because she has clearly a lot of anxiety and a lot of trauma in her life she has never worked on. So this is the main focus. And then of course, focus on connection and lots of laughter. But I'm finding it very challenging. I see that she has a hard time applying what I'm explaining to her, especially the connection part. I see that she has a very hard time connecting with her daughters. And somehow I just wanted to know your opinion, what to do in these cases. Like I can explain her examples, but then she explains what's happening in her house. And it's just, yeah, I find it really challenging, because it's like I can see how much disconnection there is, and the daughters are very angry at her the whole time, and it's hard for her. So I'm helping her to release her emotions about this, about the whole situation, so she has someone to talk to, which certainly is helpful. But somehow I cannot see lots of improvement there, because she's so stuck with her own emotions. So do you have any recommendation?
I do. So first of all, the selective mutism is anxiety, right? That's what it is. And anxiety is fear. We call it anxiety, but it's just fear. And children, like adults, are on a continuum where our nervous systems, some of us get very anxious and some of us don't get very anxious at all. And most of us are somewhere on that continuum. I mean, all of us are somewhere on the continuum, right? And we find that children who tend to be more anxious often have parents who also tend to be more anxious. And that's what you've just described. And we don't know if it's probably biological. That's what we always assume. But when you have a mom who's got past traumas and issues she hasn't worked out, then it makes sense that she feels less safe in the world. And that gets communicated to her children, right? When we're anxious, Harry Stack Sullivan is a very famous psychologist at the turn of the last century, like at 1900. And he said, when we hold a child, a baby, we're communicating either our well-being or our anxiety to them. And their nervous system, we know, is not, we later learned, is not fully formed when they're born. And so it takes its cues from us. Is it a safe world or not? So what you're describing makes a lot of sense. That's the first thing. The second thing you just described, everybody on this call can relate to, which is we can only be the parent we want to be to the degree that we have that inside. She hears from you. It's so great she has you to talk to, by the way. It's so great. And she hears from you how important it is she connect with her kids. And yet we all know what it's like to feel like we can't connect with them right now. We ourselves are too busy, too stressed, too anxious, too emotional, too wiped out, too something distracted, right? We've all been in that situation. And some of us who didn't get a lot of intimacy when we were growing up aren't so comfortable with intimacy. So I think what you're describing is someone who is having to work on herself before she can be the parent she'd like to be. And that's true for all of us, right? That's the work, is to work on ourselves. I would recommend that she continues to work with you on herself, and B, that she maybe does a little more. I don't know what you're doing with her exactly, but just telling her to connect more is not going to work. She needs to feel comfortable connecting more, right? So you will have to help her. You have to give her very specific instructions about what she can do, games to play, for instance. And you're right that laughter, really good to do with kids who have selective mutism, because it helps with it regulates the nervous system by offloading some of the stress hormones, right? So that's important. But I'm wondering if also maybe you want to do some specific, like work with her, get a good anxiety workbook. You could even use Kristen Neff's self-compassion workbook, which is very good. It's not for anxiety, but it's really good for everybody to settle into ourselves, right? And love ourselves, which is what the work for everybody. But it also might be good to get an anxiety workbook and work through it with her. Maybe you don't have to do everything, but find the things that resonate and assign them to her, maybe even do some things together with her, or assign her things and have her come back and talk with you about how it was for her, just to help her with her own stuff some. The reason I thought of Kristen Neff is actually more when you said trauma, it's not going to solve trauma, but it helps anyone who's had a hard time. We need more compassion for ourselves. So that's helpful. Anyway, that's what I do with her. The child, I think, needs an expert, probably. Somebody who actually has. A lot of people have no experience with selective mutism, and they should not be treating kids with it, because they sort of, we'll give the kid rewards, a star chart if they talk in school, as opposed to helping the child feel safe in school, right? And so I think the child ends up feeling like a failure when they can't do the star chart, but they're not feeling safe enough to talk. So I think somebody who has experience with treating selective mutism would be the right person. I wouldn't, the mom has so much work to do that. I wouldn't wait until the mom is all better to affect the child. I think the child probably needs support now, because she's missing out on some interactions at school that would benefit her, because that's just what kids need developmentally. So it'd be better for her to also have treatment at this time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next in the queue is Louise. If you could unmute yourself. Hi, Louise.
Hi. So I have two boys who are aged 7 and 5, and thinking that, particularly for my 7-year-old, now is the time to tell him about the man in red at Christmas who came down the chimney, because he's going to junior school, and they're the ages of children there is 7 to 11. So if I don't tell him, someone else is going, like another kid is going to tell him between now and Christmas. So what's best to do that, and how do I do it without kind of, and I think, I don't know if I should tell both of them, but without kind of like really like hurting them and upsetting them, because I feel sad about telling them.
So what you said is so important. We have our own feelings about the stuff, right? And working on those is important, as well as what we do to support our kids. Okay, so I have to hear from you a little more here. So your family doesn't celebrate Christmas, is that correct?
We do. Oh, yes, we do. Yeah. We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me what the conversation is that you feel you need to have. So I'm sorry, I shouldn't even have asked that yet. So you do celebrate Christmas, But you
Yes.
don't have Santa in your Christmas, is that correct?
We do. Oh, yes, we do. We do have Santa. So they get the stocking in the morning on Christmas morning, and they're opening
And
it.
who do they think brought the stocking?
Santa. So we leave the stocking out, and then Santa fills it.
Okay, great. So they think Santa comes in, the man in red in the chimney, and fills the stocking. That's what they think happens. Okay, so I'm obviously missing something, because you're saying kids at school are going to tell him it's not real. Is that right?
Correct.
Is that what you're worried about? I
Yeah.
see. So you're thinking you have to tell him it's not real before the other kids tell him at school.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And he's 7.
Yeah.
And no one,
And
and it's not the first time he's ever talked to another child at Christmas time. Other
no.
children.
Yeah. And he has kind of gone, previously he's gone, how does he get down the chimney? You know, and you're like, I don't know. And then we went to this like really like a splashdown, like a really expensive Christmas experience last year, and we saw this like amazing Santa and the whole thing with like Disney. And he said, you know, I know he's real because I've seen him. And you're like, yeah, I'm like,
So he's wondering if it's real, because it's a probable thing, you know, to get down the chimney and get around the whole world and all those things. Yes. So, but he's already discussing whether he could be real, but he has seen him, so at least he thinks he's real. Okay. So who here has worried about this? First of all, raise your hand if you've worried about this question. Yeah. And who here has had the discussion with your child and told them, without the child asking, has raised it with your child without the child asking and said, not a real thing? Okay. So Victoria says she's talked to her child, and also Candace, you both brought it up yourselves before your child did. And who here has had your child come to you and say, it's not real? The other kids at school said it's not real. Aha. So Carol says she, and Heidi, okay, that you've had your child come to you. So it's such a hard thing to decide whether to bring it up in advance, right? But I think there are graceful ways of doing it. And I would say something like, and then I'd love to hear what other people said to their kids. And you can write it in the chat actually while I'm talking, because I'm sure everybody has their own wrap on this, what they've told their kids. Well, go ahead and write it in the chat if you have an idea. I would say something like, you know, Christmas is coming, and Santa is such a special idea that of humans being kind to each other. And especially at this time of year, because it's a special, are you Christian, I'm assuming, or you wouldn't be doing Christmas probably, right? So
yeah, non-practicing.
Okay, so non-practicing. Does he know anything about why Christmas exists, about Jesus?
Oh yeah, so he's learned about Jesus and he knows the story, yeah.
So it's a special time of year because it honors the birth of Jesus. And so this is a time when people want to celebrate and give each other gifts and be especially kind and go out of their way to be kind to each other. So a long time ago, people there was a saint who did this, who would go to children's houses and bring them. There was a saint in Norway. Somebody's going to have to help me with that. I'm Jewish, so I don't actually know where the saint was, but there was a saint. And he went to people's houses, children's houses, and he brought them gifts for Christmas. And even though he died a long time ago, people love the idea of this wonderful saint bringing the presents. And so we honor him by saying that it's Santa who comes and fills the stockings and goes to every little boy or girl's house. And you could think of it as everyone who fills a stocking is a Santa. And it doesn't matter if it's your mom or dad or your aunt or uncle or the neighbor next door, everybody who fills a stocking is a Santa. And we celebrate I think that what we're doing is celebrating the birth of Christ by doing this, but we're also honoring the spirit of giving by doing this. Now, your child will be like, wait a minute, way back. You said he's not real, he died, right? I assume that's what your son will say. And you say, he lived a very long time ago, sweetheart. And so, yes, he did die, but everyone agreed that it was such a wonderful thing he did that we wanted to keep doing it. Well, wait a minute, who's filling my stocking? that would be me and your dad, because we're Santas just for that one night. No! Who's been eating the milk and cookies? Right? And you say, well, actually, since we're Santas, we thought we could eat the milk and cookies. But you know what? Now that you know about this, you could be a Santa too. And you could help fill your brother's stocking. And you could eat the milk and cookies too. But we'd have to figure out how to do that after your brother's in bed. So anybody have any other idea? Oh, there, I see Candace has put the origin story from St. Nicholas. Thank you. Where was he from? Do we know? Don't know. Okay.
Greek, Myra. He's Greek originally, it looks like, but then he transformed into, I don't
Something
know.
else. Okay.
Yeah.
So a worldwide phenomenon. Okay. All right. So does anybody have anything else that's wise to say about this that you have said to your kids? Feel free to share it. Jump in.
We did something similar where the spirit of Christmas exists in all of us. And as my older child, who kind of, figured it out, this makes no sense, yet willfully wanted to believe for a long time, and then just said, hey, I said, you know what? It's a feeling. It's the way we express love to each other, and that, we're Santas for the ones we love. And we did something similar. So now she participates in being a Santa, and surprisingly has told her brother nothing, which,
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything that you want to say about what you did? Okay.
We just talked about the story behind it, and we kind of did some research behind it and said, hey, actually in quite a few different cultures there's some form of Santa Claus. And then they got really interested in that, okay, so this is not just a Christian thing. Hey, China has their own version, Greece has their own version, some other places do as well. So it took their mind off of, hey, you lied to me, to, hey, this is actually a historical thing that happened around a lot of different places.
I think the you lied to me part is the big fear we all have, right? Because trust is at the foundation of our relationship with our children. And I think it's important to say, this is a tradition that people do with children, and children love it, and it's sort of magical. And so that's why we do it. And we never saw it as something that would be an untruth. I think that's an important thing to say. And I think it's also important to recognize that they might have some feelings about that. When my daughter discovered that the tooth fairy wasn't real, she was crushed and she screamed at me. She was really upset at me. I don't even remember how old she was, maybe 7. And I asked her, not even that long after that, at some point, and I asked her again much later as a teenager, whether I should have, because she asked me directly, is there a tooth fairy? And I said, no. I've been being the tooth fairy. And so when I asked her, should I have told you the truth when you asked? She said, absolutely. You had been telling me there was a tooth fairy because that's the mythology. But if you told me that there was, when I asked you directly, is there a tooth fairy? If you had lied to me, I would not have forgiven you. That's interesting, So I think it's fine to have had the mythology, but if they ask you directly, I think you have to tell them the truth. I mean, I think it would be better to tell them the truth. Is that helpful, Louise?
Yeah, that is so helpful. And you describe it in a way that is really, it's really lovely. It's kind of like letting them down gently. It was really, I feel like, okay, it's going to be okay. So yeah, thank you.
And when you said you have some feelings too about Santa not being real, I mean, I think you can say all of us want there to be a real Santa, and it's a little sad not to have a real Santa. Wouldn't that be amazing? It's like, secretly, sweetheart, I've always wanted a magic wand. Wouldn't it be great if we had one? And we could just pretend there's a real Santa if you want, and we could just pretend that this is my magic wand if we want, But I think acknowledging the sadness of it is okay too.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I think our next person, I'm having to go back up, is Esther.
Hi. Of course, my son just walked in. Sorry.
Hi.
I think maybe I can defer to the next.
Okay, you're going to defer and we're going to take the next person who I think is
Lauren.
Lauren. Okay, hi, Lauren. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hiya. So my 6-year-old daughter is extremely anxious, always has been. But recently she started talking a lot about death, and she seems to be particularly worried about me dying and leaving her. So we've had lots of conversations. Like the sort of the way I've approached it is I've kind of said to her, you know, I intend to be here for, you know, a really long time, and I look after my body and I exercise and I eat healthily, and so, you know, the chances are I'm going to be here for a really long time and I'm always going to be with you, and blah blah blah. We also talk a lot. We're Christian, so, you know, she believes there's a heaven. She believes that my dad is in heaven. There's been some family history of cancer. So my dad died when she was 3, and my husband's aunt died of the same kind of cancer. So I think she's worrying about that. It's not been like anyone really, really close to her recently, but she just seems really, really worried about death at the moment. And I just don't know if there's anything else I can be doing to reassure her. I don't want to push it down and push it away, because I remember being a kid and being worried about death myself and not processing it terribly well. And I think I still have some fear around that. And I'm interested in what your approach would be, I guess.
When you were a child and you were worried about death, did the adults around you help you talk about it? Did they reassure you? What happened?
I don't think I really talked about it. I'm worried that if I talked about it, I'd jinx it and make something happen. So I just sat with it myself, and I'm very glad that she's talking about it.
Yeah, how great that you've helped her feel safe enough to bring it up to you. It's great. You know, it's such a funny thing that as a society, I'm just going to talk about American society because maybe it's different in some cultures, but at least in Western culture, certainly in the US, first of all, every one of us is going to die. And secondly, we don't talk about it. It doesn't come up. We don't talk about it. People die and we handle it at the time in whatever way. But it's almost like when you were a kid and you didn't want to jinx anything by saying anything, you know, like we're just not going to mention that we could all die, right? And I think that's not the most healthy way for a society to deal with death. I think it is there are cultures that have existed, not Western culture, where it's been a healthier, you know, you live in a village and people die and you see the body even as a child, and it's certainly scary, but if you're allowed to talk about it and people are honored when they die, and we acknowledge that everybody dies and that therefore we need to use the life we have well, because it's such a precious thing and it matters so much what we choose to do every single day, right? Those kinds of lessons we don't, you know, kids don't get in that same way. And I think kids are afraid to mention it. But that said, 5 years old, 6 years old, very common time, age appropriate, normal development is kids start to deal with death. They start to realize that this is a real thing and they start to get worried about it. And of course, it's completely normal that it comes out as anxiety about losing their parent. Sometimes kids are anxious about dying themselves, but much more often.
I think she's worried about that as well, but
yeah.
I don't think she's wanted to share quite that.
Yes, well, they're worried. They want to protect us.
Yeah.
Right. They don't want us to think they could die. Right. They don't want to break that news to us. So I would say what you've told her is perfect. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen to any of us, but to say, I intend to live until you're grown up and have children of your own. You know, I'm going to be here a very long time. You won't be able to get rid of me. I'm going to live in the house next door to you. You know, to have that kind of.
Oh no, sure, we're living in the same house currently.
Yes, and I'm going to be living in your house is just fine too. And she won't take that as anything. You know, a 13-year-old be like, but she would not have that reaction. Be like, of course you're living with me. Where would you go? So I think that is the right answer to her. And I think it's also important to say, the human body can't last forever. People do die eventually, just like everything dies. You know, trees get old and fall down. You've seen when we go for walks in the woods that there are trees that have fallen down, and, you know, the goldfish die, you know, things come to the end of their lifespan. But most humans live a full lifespan, and that is until they're, you know, grandparents, until they're pretty old. So I intend to be here a long time, blah, blah. Absolutely, that is the right thing to say to her. And to say, you know, it's true that sometimes people get sick and their bodies stop working earlier than that, but that's why I take good care of myself, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why it's really important that we do the things that we know to do to take good care of ourselves. That's why we eat a good diet and get enough sleep and, you know, run around outside and breathe the fresh air, et cetera. So I think all of that is really important. I would also talk about death through books. There are a lot of good books for kids about death that, you know, about a child losing their puppy, and sometimes a child losing, you know, their grandfather. And I think those are good to read so that kids can see, oh, this does happen to people and it's very sad and they survive it. So I think
that's a good idea.
As a way to help a 5 or 6-year-old process the stuff that's up for them, I think keeping the lines of conversation open and having conversations like that, and saying, hey, I found this book. I mean, on the AHA Parenting website, there is a page called Books to Explain Death to Children. Take a look at that. Look at the Amazon reviews, see which ones look good to you, buy a couple, or get them from the library, and, you know, read them and see what happens. See what you think. But I think it'll normalize it and be reassuring.
And what age would you say? So she wants to go and see my dad. My dad's grave is in Devon, where my mum lives, which is quite away from us. But whenever we go, I go to the grave. I don't normally tell them. I normally go, you know, when they're not around. But I'm wondering whether it's time took her. I know the way her brain thinks, she's going to, the reality of him being buried and all of that is going to be really hard for her. And I can envision nightmares for a long time to come after that. So I don't
think it's
know
an
whether
important
she's too young
question.
or whether
I think that one of the questions is how you talk to her about being buried. I mean, every one of us would have nightmares if we envisioned ourselves as we are this moment under the ground. But I think what you're saying is, sweetheart, when your grandfather died, his soul left his body. His soul is in heaven. I mean, you believe in heaven. This is what you've taught her. His soul is in heaven, and he is not in that body anymore. And, you know, it's funny and anyone who's ever been with someone who's passed away, while they're passing away, what you see is 1 minute they're alive and the next minute they're not. And we know when the soul is in the body. And if you don't believe in a soul, that's okay. We know when the life force has left the body. I do believe in a soul, but some people don't. And that's fine. I think we explain to our kids our belief system because that's what we have to pass on, just like our value system. At any rate, you're saying when he died, his soul left his body. It's not in his body anymore. And just like the tree falls in the forest and it begins to rot and bugs live in it and it goes back to the ground, you know, that's what happens to our bodies, is they disintegrate too. And it's so great because some people actually are buried in a park with a tree over them and they're giving life to that tree. Isn't that amazing? But they don't know it. Their body is not conscious. There's nothing alive in their body anymore. It's dead, it's deteriorating. And so your grandfather is in the ground, and I know that sounds weird, but he doesn't experience it as being in the ground. He's with God.
Okay.
Does that seem like you could say that to her? You asked me how old.
Yeah.
I think what matters first is that it's this discussion, because I think kids get totally freaked out about the idea that somebody could be alive and be buried, right? But they're missing, they can't quite conceive of not being alive, the body not being alive, right? Once you have that,
she's got such a vivid imagination that she'd still imagine his body there. And I think
it's pretty weird to think
at the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty weird to think about worms crawling through our bones, right? I mean, it's a weird thing. No, it's a weird thing. And we're asking a 6-year-old to do that. I mean, that's sort of weird, right? So I take your point. It is a weird thing. I think there are other ways for her to honor her dad, but if she's in Devon visiting her grandmother, she's going to want to go, right?
Well, so
So you're going to have to do
mum's
preliminary
got a
work.
tree in her garden.
Say that
My mum's
again.
got a tree in her garden. My mum's got a tree in her garden where they sort of go and blow bubbles and stuff. So that's how we've been doing it at the moment.
Uh-huh.
But yeah.
Okay. So you've been having a way to honor her grandfather.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. And I think you can say that at some point you're going to have to take her to his grave. I think you're going to have to watch her to see how she handles the information about burial. I think that's really the question, because like the rest of death, it's not such an easy thing for humans to wrap our mind around, because it's so divorced from anything we've seen. I mean, if you lived on a farm and you watched animals die and you buried their bodies, and at some point, you saw skeletons or bones, I think you would realize that's not your person, right? But if you don't have that experience, which modern children do not, it's a lot harder. It's a lot more of a stretch. Does anybody else have any wisdom? These are such great questions today. Does anybody else have any wisdom of anything you've shared with your child that you'd like to share here? Do you think would be helpful? I think we make these things up. It's like you're learning your part while you're on stage. You just have to come up with the lines, but we're trying to share the truest understanding of what's actually so with our children that we can. And I think if you do that and you're comfortable with, you know what, that's not my dad. My dad is in heaven with God. If that's what you believe in, you communicate that to your daughter, I think she'll get that.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
Okay.
One thing that I say to my kids when we talk about that, we always I always try to explain to them what is permanent, like to give them some grounding. So what I said, that the only thing that never dies is love. That's in my opinion. And then I say, so whatever you feel here, that I'm like, we are always gonna be connected, even if I'm not here, even whoever you love, that love is always gonna be with you. So I always try to get them grounded with that, okay, everything disappears. So it's kind of scary. It's scary for me. So I guess for them too. So I always try to get that, like, you are never going to lose this.
I love that, Eva. Thank you. And it does remind me that children who've actually lost someone, I mean, she's lost her grandfather, but when she was 3, so it's a little while ago, but children who've lost someone, if they can talk to that person, it's very helpful in having them process the death. If they can have, this is my little thing from my grandfather and I talk to it, and, it's the little thing he gave me, whatever it is, or it's something that was from his house. And I talk to my grandfather, and sometimes I imagine what he might say if he were here. I think it's really, the research shows it's actually super helpful to children to have those experiences. And so we want to encourage them to remember that if you're connected to somebody by love, you will always have that connection, as Eva said, and you can always talk to them and hear them. And I think it makes them more alive to the child, so that they, again, you're not thinking of the dead body, you're thinking of the person. Yeah. Thanks, Eva. Okay, our next person in the queue is Esther, who's back. Hello.
I'm back. Thank you for your patience, and thank you so much for this group. I wanted to share briefly that because of your group and working with one of your whatever they're called, your counselor, your
coach trainees. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and she found a therapist for me, and I've been in therapy for 1.5 years, and it's been life-changing.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
People should know.
Anybody, so
Right.
go ahead. I was just going to say, anyone in the group who feels like they need to go to therapy, please try and find a good therapist. My therapist is a big fan of you, so it's a nice loop. It kind of all works together. Thank
That's
you.
wonderful. And people should
Um,
know that there are going to be a new group of coach trainees, not until January, but we're going to be doing some matching at the end of December, beginning of January. So if people want some free coaching, you can get in touch with Candace. There will be a form to fill out and whatever. And, you know, that we'll be able to, and no guarantees, but we might be able to match you for some free sessions with a parenting coach, which is always so helpful. And even if they don't end up as your longtime person because you're going to go, they're going to help you find a therapist or whatever, it's always helpful. Yeah. Okay.
it really
Thank you.
is. And my question today is I'm going to be homeschooling my children this fall, and I'm really excited about it. And I think my children are moderately excited about it. And I asked my daughter what she missed the most about public school. And just to be candid, we're those people who are doing it because of COVID. So, you know, we're on the extreme end of trying to protect ourselves from the risk of long COVID. So, you know, my daughter understands all that. We tried to be very open with her about the risk, but without scaring her. I mean, I think we're doing okay on that level. But it is at this point a little bit like being Amish or something. It's just really out there to still be trying to not circulate much without, at least, you know, we wear masks, but we don't go to that many public places. So it is tough. It's like having a completely different lifestyle now, as opposed to what the rest of the world feels like.
Yeah.
But we're doing okay, and, you know, maintaining our family connections and trying to have fun and everything. So my question is, with my daughter going back to school, but homeschool, I asked her what she would miss the most about real school, and she listed 5 things, and that was very helpful because I can kind of at least take into account, okay, she misses art class, so I will try hard to replace that. But one of the things she said she misses is structure, the school structure, knowing what to expect, the day, the schedule. And I feel in my bones how much my kids need things to be clean and neat and organized and tidy. And every time I'm able to clean the house, their creativity blossoms, you know, with a clean house. But I may have ADHD. I may just have not enough help, but I feel like I'm drowning in clutter and, you know, chores, everything, as much as I try. But I'd love to get some ideas from you about like structuring the school day, any types of ideas to keep us on track, because I tend to not follow through even on things that might seem simple. And it's really a source of frustration to my husband, and I know to my kids, because they need structure so badly.
So how great that you know this about yourself and that you're working to give your daughter what she needs. Wonderful. And you mentioned clutter, and that's important. Also, your daughter said something that wasn't clutter. She said schedule, the
Yes,
structure of
yes.
the schedule and knowing what to expect. All children, that you know, there's a reason that of our 5 preventive maintenance practices, 1 is routines. All children need to know what to expect. It makes them feel safer. So I think, you know, how great that you know that you could do a schedule. I also heard you say that sometimes you don't follow through. And I have seen folks who have, especially folks who struggle with ADHD, who have a harder time sticking to a schedule. I do think a schedule would be super helpful to your, not just your kids, but actually you, because it puts you in charge of your day, right? You know what's going on. You're not drowning then. You know, so, I mean, everyone's probably experienced being home with little kids and feeling like you're drowning, right? Like, oh my God, what do I do next? Right. But if there's a schedule, you can look at the schedule and say, oh, right, dinner's not for 2 hours. Now's the time to do X, Y, Z, right? So, you know, if you have a schedule, it can keep you from drowning. So I would say the first thing would be come up with a schedule. And, you know, here's the thing, you don't want it to be, it doesn't have to be super detailed. It has to be like a basic schedule, like, you know, every morning between 7 and 8:30, we do these things. We get out of, you know, kids wake up and we get dressed, we have breakfast, we brush our teeth, we clean, we work together to clean up the kitchen. done. Then, and by the way, since you have the luxury of being in charge of your own schedule, one of the cures for clutter and mess is to have it be part of the schedule, that everyone works together to clean it up. And because we were all raised to think of those kinds of chores as being onerous, our children we think of them as onerous, and our children think of them as onerous. But if we can make them fun, if we always put on music while we clean up together, right? And we sing and dance while we're cleaning up the kitchen, and we celebrate afterwards with some fun thing that the kids love, like roughhousing or something, right? Or just turn it into a dance party once you're done cleaning up, whatever. Then it's not so onerous. And also, it's sort of like brushing your teeth. Nobody wants to brush their teeth when they're little. Nobody really wants to brush their teeth ever. But when it's part of the schedule and you get used to it, eventually you become a person who brushes their teeth and you just brush your teeth. And they will become people who pick up their things or clean up after breakfast or whatever, just because that's what your family does. So it is very helpful if you're home with kids all day, they need to help you clean up, because otherwise you're, again, drowning. So I would say your schedule needs to include those moments and make them fun. Figure out a way to make the cleanup parts fun. And, I'm not a homeschooler, but what I know about homeschooling is kids can get done most of the work they need to get done in a very short time, and then they can have unschooling. But your daughter might not actually flourish with that. She might like a more structured day. So while it's true that probably between 9 and 11, everybody could go on, what's the mathnasium and do their math, one after another, half an hour each for an hour and a half, right? If you have 3 kids.
Only two.
Oh, only 2. Okay. So they could go each do a half an hour of mathnasium, and then the other half hour, they could work with you on their reading, right? And those are the most important things to do, that is sort of a structured thing, because then you could have, the rest of your day given to, let's go explore outside and turn into a science lesson, or let's go to the library and get books about pirates, and then we'll have a history lesson. You can do all kinds of things that are kid-led based on their interests and that are not schooly. And that often protects kids' love of learning better. However, that kind of lack of structure probably doesn't work for your girl. So I'm going to suggest that you actually do map out, that the beginning of the day when everybody's fresh is when you do the hard stuff like math and reading. But that then there's, there's a snack, there's lunch, there's rest time, there's some free play, whatever else is in your day. But that you make sure to have art class every single day. Since she loves art class, why not have art class? There's a million projects out there that don't cost money that could be so fun, right? And you could also have art class, could be maybe 3 days a week, and you could do baking 2 days a week, which is great to learn math, and not to mention cooking, cooking, not just baking. So, you can brainstorm with your kids about what would be fun for them to learn, which is more child-led, and still put that in your schedule. But then I have a question for you. As you think about the schedule, does this feel like relief from drowning, or does it feel like you would be in a constraint?
No, it feels like relief.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You could do this. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you can evaluate it over time and see if it really works for you, right? And remember, homeschool doesn't have to look like school, right? I think are there any homeschoolers here? Homeschoolers would tell you school doesn't have to look like school, and it's often better if it doesn't. But I think to the degree that it helps your daughter feel safe to have the structure, it's really good to have a schedule with structure.
Thank you. I'm the person who's always wants to find, it's probably, a form of being scattered, but finding all the tools and all the apps and all this, and then they don't work for me anyway.
And really not necessary. There are wonderful curriculums out there. But have you listened to the homeschooling? Oh, wait a minute. It's getting released next week. I have an audio on homeschooling that I'm going to send out next week. It was supposed to be last week, but we ended up doing more printables. So it's going to be next week. So watch for it.
Okay. Thank you so much for these ideas. I mean, particularly building in the home care and cooking as part of the day will really help, because I am sort of feeling like that servant model, like I'm just taking care of them, taking care of the house, and it kind of leads to some burnout.
Of
you
course
know?
it does. Of course it does. And I love the idea that one of the things that's part of your day, the structure, is that everybody makes dinner together. Or if that doesn't work, one kid can make dinner with you one day, and then the next day the other kid can make dinner with you. But, and then the other kid can be on dish duty with you later or whatever. But the point is that it's good for them. It's great for them to do laundry. It's not a bad thing to grow up knowing how to do these things. And if you make it fun and it's part of bonding with you, they will
Mhm.
be okay with it.
Gosh, I feel even more excited now. Thank you. Thank you so
Good
much.
luck. Yes, you're welcome. It looks to me like Kara's the only person with her hand up. Is that, I could scroll back, but okay. Candace says yes. Kara,
Correct.
you could, what? Correct? Okay, great. Kara, if you could unmute yourself, you there?
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm sorry I don't have video. I'm in the car and it just won't support it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So my question is about my 6-year-old. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and my 6-year-old has always been very sensitive, from the moment he was born, literally. And I have worked really hard, I feel like, to meet his needs. And I've learned a lot, and he's really taught me a lot. And my 3-year-old is easy as pie. And that's not Hank. He just has always felt things really, I don't know, he has big reactions, and he's sensitive, and I think he's strong-willed, and he's pretty impulsive. And yeah, the thing that's going on right now is so hitting is a big problem, not at school. And I mean, he's home for the summer. But whenever anything is off, right? Like the transition from school to home, it was 2 weeks of hell. It was like he was just melting down, he was hitting, he was acting out, and then we kind of got in a good rhythm and it was okay. Or he got used to being home. And then it's like we go on vacation, it's a hard transition. And then right now, I think so I actually have COVID right now.
Oh.
And so I've had it for a week and a half, and I've been really sick. I'm finally starting to get a little bit better, but it's been really hard for him to see me sick, right? It would be hard for any kid, but it's just like anything that kind of comes off really kind of knocks him in a way that it doesn't to his sister, because they're different kids, of course. But I can't get him to stop hitting. I don't know what to do. It's like, I mean, eventually he'll stop, but it's like he is just so impulsive. And it used to be that I could see it coming and I could be like, Henry, and redirect him and get him to do something else. But now it's like I say that and he runs for his little sister faster so he can start punching her before I get there. And then it was before he would stop, right? When I said, hey, stop it, bud, or whatever. But now it's like I have to like pry him off of her, and I have to like hug him so that he can't hit me or kick me. And then I put him in his room, and I didn't used to close the door. I would just put him on his bed and I would stay with him, and I'd be like, okay, deep breaths, let's do a reset. And if he didn't want me, I'd stand outside the door. But now he continues hitting or kicking me in his room, and the only way that I can figure out how to get him to stop is I either keep holding him and restraining him, or I have to close the door and say, like, honey, you can come out whenever you're done hitting and kicking. This is not timeout.
And are you able to stay outside the door then?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. So how long has the hitting been going on? It's not just since you've had COVID, which has only been a short time.
I would say that it kind of comes and goes. So whenever he is having a hard time and he acts out, this is one of the ways he acts out. Okay. Right. And then it's like he works through it. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah, you're gonna get sick, and then the next day he'll get sick, right? And it's like that's why he was hitting, because he didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Or it's like he's upset because he was going to school every day and now he's not going to school. It's like there's always a discrete thing and we can work through it. But then it's like he's really sensitive, so there's going to be another thing.
Yeah,
It's
of course, of course.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
you know, the reason we do preventive maintenance is exactly this. It's that it keeps the deck clear, so whatever does come along doesn't throw everything off.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't have the luxury that most people do of not doing all the preventive maintenance.
Right.
You actually have to do it all.
Right.
So
And even when I had COVID and I was lying on the floor, we did special time. I was like, okay, the rule is you can pick anything I can do lying down or sitting in a chair. Like we did it.
wow, good for you.
Because I know he needs it.
You
But
know
I
how
just
much
feel
he
like
needs-
even
yeah.
with everything, it's not enough.
Yeah, yeah. So you've said it sounds like you're doing special time all the time. That's great.
Every day.
And great. And what about roughhousing?
Yes. So it's interesting. He has been declining roughhousing. We were doing roughhousing only for special time. Like that was always what he would pick for months and months and months.
Mm.
And now he picks other things for special time.
Mhm. Fine.
And so we still
no
do,
roughhousing.
we actually do. So we do, I guess it's still rough. Like we do like games jumping on the bed and like catching
That's
things
roughhousing.
and me throwing pillows at them and like, yeah.
That's roughhousing. That's roughhousing.
Yeah.
Anything that
Okay.
gets laughter going. Does
Yeah.
he?
Yes, he does. Yeah. Oh, he
Okay.
loves roughhousing. He loves it. I
Right.
feel like he's just really impulsive. Like, and he always feels bad. He feels bad afterwards. He feels
Good.
terrible.
Does
And
he make a repair, Kara, afterwards? Does he make a repair?
Usually.
Okay. So it's not like he has a chronic resentment of his sister that he says afterwards, no, I will never apologize to her. I'll never make things better with her. Or I wish she
In the
wasn't.
moment, he'll say that, but
No, I
he
understand. But
won't.
afterwards,
Yeah,
once he calms
yeah,
down.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So he does make a repair later. So that's good. So this is
Yes.
not about the chronic resentment thing, which many kids have toward a sibling.
Uh-huh.
It's about his being impulsive. And the good news on that is it's a delay. It will come. But the bad news is your daughter needs to be kept safe in the interim, right? And it
Well,
takes.
and he needs to be kept safe because how does it feel for him to be like out of control and hitting? You know?
Mhm. Have you asked him?
I haven't asked him. I've said that feels pretty bad, huh? When you
Good.
feel mad like that and you're hitting. And
Good
I
for
know
you.
you don't want to hit your sister. And then like he'll cry.
Beautiful. So you're speaking to what's resonant for him, or he wouldn't cry. You're
Mhm.
actually touching in with what he's feeling, which is beautiful. And you can also say, you have a choice, sweetheart. You, at that moment, it feels like that's the only thing that will make you feel better, but it actually isn't. So we have to do something that will divert you. You can't stop the feelings, but that will divert you.
Mhm.
So what could we do? And what would he say?
Mhm. So we've tried a bunch of stuff and sometimes it works for a little while. So hitting a pillow, and I know that that's not recommended, but he wanted to, and so I said yes.
Great. Did it help?
And yep, it did for a little bit. Hitting a pillow, jumping up and down. Sometimes right at the very beginning, I think he feels bad about doing whatever it was, and then it escalates. And so for a while we were saying, okay, we'll just push the reset button. Or like, like 100 hugs, right? And I will literally give him 100 hugs. And that helps, right? But it's like it wears off in a few hours. If there's something, if he's
everything's
sensitive.
Kara, I hear how hard you're working. You're being so heroic. And I want to reassure you, it's not permanent. It's a delay. It's a delay in impulse control. And I have seen many kids who have this delay, who then are completely different a year later.
Okay.
So that's first of all. The second thing is everything's going to wear off. It's like this is a kid who needs to laugh, not just once a day during roughhousing, but over and over again during the day to siphon off the stress chemicals that are making him, you said it's always a discrete, a specific thing that happens that makes him act like this. And when that thing is happening, if he has any buildup of tension at all, it's going to send him over the edge sooner. So if you can have it be part of the routine that he offloads that tension more often, that he, as you said, the hugs don't last, but you can hug him over and over again. It's almost like right now, while he's in the middle of this, you have to make this your big project. You have to put this center stage in your life and make it your top priority too, all day long. It like be noticing and be intervening to help him, to restore a sense of well-being to him over and again, all day long. Because he's hypersensitive, not hyper, he's super sensitive. It's a gift, it's a superpower, but if he learns to manage it, right, it's gonna have an effect. And he will gain impulse control, and he will also learn to manage this superpower. And you can talk to him about it as that, the sensitivity. You notice everything. And sometimes you notice things that you don't even notice you notice. It's below the level of perception, and you're noticing the noise in the room or the airplane flying by or something just throws you because you notice something and you're not even sure what you noticed because you're so perceptive. And that's the superpower, sweetheart, but it's also something you have to learn to manage. It occurs to me, Kara, that some of the resources for resilience are good for him.
Okay.
That if you save those from when we did resilience, those might be helpful.
Okay.
And also the ones for anxiety, not because you've said anything that makes me think he's super anxious, but just because when you're very sensitive, it's destabilizing and can make you afraid, and that can create anxiety that you have to also. So
okay, so resilience and anxiety and lots of laughing, and just
Lots of
whenever it's a spell, make it the major project to get him through it.
Yeah. And the more your love for him is like tangible. In this room, we're feeling it. And that's what he has to feel too. And so all the hugs and belief in him that you can give him is really important, because it'd be very easy to be frightened, to think, oh, he's always going to be this way, but he's not always.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. Victoria, is that right? Yep. Hi.
Okay, so mine is kind of interesting. It's more just, it's not about my kids as much. It's just some kind of conflicting messaging I'm getting with the different research and books and all the stuff online. So I kind of wanted to get your perspective on the two, it seems, schools of thought of, one, my emotions are valid and they're sending me a message. And the other side, which I'm seeming to hear a lot of, which is I choose how to feel and no one can make me feel anything I don't want to. What's the balance there?
That's such a great question. Such a great question. Okay, so first of all, where do emotions, first of all, let's back up. What are emotions for?
Messages our body's sending us.
Yes, exactly. And the message is coming from a thought. We're having some thought, and the thought might be unconscious. A conscious thought is, I can't handle this thing my kid is doing at this moment. That's a conscious thought. And that thought creates a feeling of overwhelm and depletion and like, oh, I'm just going to collapse here, right? So the thought is it could be an unconscious thought. Maybe the unconscious thought is, a fear we have that my child is never going to get potty trained, right? Or maybe that's conscious. I'm trying to think of something that would be unconscious thought, but I know. If I were sexually molested when I was 9, and my daughter turns 9, I might not even make the connection, but begin to be very overprotective. That would be an unconscious fear, right? That I might not even be aware of, but that could make me act in a certain way and make me anxious, right? Very, very anxious. So we can have thoughts that are unconscious and we don't know that they're happening, or we can have thoughts that are conscious. And all of those thoughts lead to feelings.
Mhm.
And the feelings are messages. They're saying, okay, pay attention, and then we have to evaluate where that thing is coming from. And if we want to entertain that thought in a sense. That's the school of thought that when that says you can choose to feel it and no one can make you feel something, right? That's that school of thought that says, actually, I could work on this residue I have about sexual abuse, and I could say, actually, my daughter is safe. She's in a different situation. I'm here. She's safe. I've educated her. She's fine. I'll notice my own stuff when it comes up. But then the feelings that come up to me are very useful to notice my unresolved issues for me.
Mm.
Right? So, I'm hearing a lot of noise, so I may mute you if I keep hearing more. Maybe it's somebody else that maybe Candace or Heidi could figure out. Okay, so when we have a feeling, it's a signal, and sometimes it's a signal we need to take action, but sometimes it's not the action we think. The action may not be protecting our daughter. Of course you're going to protect your daughter, but to be overprotective, right, or to get anxious. In fact, the action I need to take might be to work on myself and to remind myself that I'm safe and she's safe, and that I can work this out and it's okay, right? That this is history that cannot touch either of us at this point, as a for instance. So that could be the work that I need to do at that moment. So it's always giving us information, but we need often to reflect on it from a safe perspective where we're compassionate to ourselves. Oh, I don't know why I've been so anxious and overprotective lately. Oh, right. And give ourselves that compassion and calm ourselves down, calm our nervous system, and then think, well, what would my wisest part of me say to do in this situation, right? What I haven't really addressed is, what about when you're swept by a big emotion, right? You're not just going to deny it, because like if I'm livid about something, saying, oh, I'm not mad is not going to make it go away, right? Because how are we feeling the emotion? It's in our body, right? It's hormones and neurotransmitters that are making my adrenaline go through the roof and, pumping my heart so I'm ready to fight off an intruder or run away from a tiger, right? The body gets ready to handle whatever it is because I felt a threat, right? Let's say. So when I'm feeling it, I can't just say, oh, I'm not feeling that, it'll go away. When we do that, it's called stuffing it in one way to say it, one metaphor to use is stuffing it in our emotional backpack. What we're doing is we're cutting off our conscious awareness of the emotion, but it stays in the body, and it will make us sick if it stays in the body, but we're not consciously aware of it. And remember, anything that's out of conscious awareness, any feeling, will burst out without any regulation from your conscious mind. I wouldn't want to blurt out that thing that I'm yelling at somebody, but I would do it if I'm not consciously aware of that thing, whatever that thing is. So when we have an emotion, we do have to notice it, but we don't have to act on it. That's the definition of mindfulness. Notice it, notice all of it. Just be with it, notice the feeling that's come up. Oh, I'm feeling really annoyed at my mother-in-law right this minute because she made that remark. Oh, and maybe later I'll realize that I took offense and I didn't need to, that I was overreacting. We always think we're right at the moment. At the moment, I'm right. How could my mother-in-law say that? But actually later we realize often that we overreacted and she didn't mean anything, or even if she did, it was her issue, not mine. Information about her, not about me, right? But at the moment that we're in the big emotion, we can notice it. We're not just cutting off awareness of it, right? We're noticing it. And we have a choice about whether to act on it. I can be angry. I can notice that I'm angry. And when even saying I'm angry, well, I'm lots of things besides angry, even at that moment, right? I'm feeling anger is a more accurate way to say it, right? Anger is, if you're a meditator, what you notice is the feelings arise and they pass away. Every minute of your meditation, there's some feeling arising. Maybe it's anger, maybe it's jealousy, maybe it's boredom, maybe it's joy. It arises, and unfortunately, the joy doesn't last any more than the anger does, but all of the feelings are rising and passing away. That's what they do. And if we sit with the anger or any other feeling long enough, what we know, and we breathe, and we're aware of it. Now, some people, when they breathe, it intensifies the feeling. So if you're having a hard time managing your anger, you don't start with the breath. You start with noticing the feeling. Oh, anger's back. Anger's back. Okay, I have a choice. And you talk yourself off the cliff. You remind yourself, I have a choice here. I'm not acting on the anger. I'm going to wait until I calm down. Over time, as you get more ability to regulate your impulses, and, I said it was a delay for the boy, the child we were just talking about, but all of us throughout our whole lives are learning how to regulate ourselves, right? How to calm down when we get upset about something, angry about something, scared about something. We learn how to talk ourselves off the cliff. And it's useful to breathe and notice, because that puts us in touch with anything stored in the body. This is why one of the best kinds of meditation is Vipassana, where, there are different kinds of it. That just, I think, means mindfulness. The kind I was originally trained on that I did for years is you just sit and you do body scans, basically. You notice your toes. You notice your feet. You allow anything into awareness that's there. And some days you won't feel anything. And some days your foot will want to fall off. And the stuff, and what will happen is feelings will come up as you're unlocking the sensations in the body. The feelings come up. And guess what? It's emptying the backpack. That's what emptying the backpack is. So when we try to cut off our emotions, they are all there in the body. And most of us carry those around with us. And it really helps to just sort of like brushing your teeth, just do a body scan every so often and get rid of that stuff. You can do it every day for a short time. You can do it, once a week, whatever works for you. But you also, as you clear that stuff out and you have more of a sense of sort of freedom and spaciousness and well-being, because it's almost like those negative emotions are like a cork holding us down. And when you take them off, you do feel more sense of ease. And as that happens, you notice more when the feeling comes up. When I start to feel like something happens, I don't really notice, and all of a sudden, I don't feel as good as I felt a little while ago. If you normally have a sense of well-being, you'll notice that more. And you'll think, what just happened? Oh, right, that other mom at the school thing said how her kids are already playing piano, and I haven't even thought about, or whatever, right? Like, and you're like, oh my goodness, am I a terrible mom? But you didn't even consciously sort of notice that you were feeling some sort of sense of inadequacy, right? But as we clear the stuff out, we notice more often when that happens. Does this all make sense? Okay, it's probably a longer amount than you wanted, but I think it's actually such a great question. And I think it's good since we didn't have any other questions in line, I think it's good for people to the more we understand about our emotions and how to have a sense of well-being, the better it is for all of us. Thanks. Okay. I don't see any other hands up, and we don't have to go any longer. We often go a little longer to handle questions, but we don't need to go any longer. So I'm going to say going once. And I'm also going to say, Heidi or Candace, if you have anything else that you've been asked recently in the groups or that you've thought about that would be a great thing to talk about, I'm also willing. Oh, and then I see affiliate. Okay, so I'm going to do affiliate. And then if we have time for one more, then, we can do one. Okay, affiliate, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I'm sorry.
Hi.
I just did that.
No worries.
So I have two daughters, almost 10-year-old and almost 5-year-old. And my question is about the older one. So she's also one of those sensitive kids, and she's very smart and perfectionist, and I think has some anxiety, and is really worried about what others are thinking about her. So that really affects her. Like, let me give you an example. So she needed a new backpack for this year. And the one that we ordered would come like a few weeks after school started. So she would use it different backpack for a few weeks, and she would need to use the new one once it arrived. And she's like, I mean, I don't want to change a backpack in the middle of the, once the school year starts. So like, it's gonna make people wonder like why I did that. Well, it's gonna draw attention on me. So, and this happens a lot. This is just one example. And now she's unfortunately has had an injury, and she has to wear a boot for a few weeks. And of course, this morning while going to school, she's like, oh, this is going to draw attention on me. And these days, I feel like she's having mood swings. Like she will be so lovely and peaceful one moment, and then very soon after that, she'll burst out. Like she'll be very angry. And she's almost 10. So I'm wondering if that's normal for her age due to hormones, or is it not normal and something that we have to look into? And I almost actually took her to a therapist a few years ago, and we were just about to do it, and then COVID hit. And we never got to do it. And actually the year that we stayed home, it was like she was very peaceful. She wasn't going to school and everything was calmer, even though she's enjoying being back at school that year. Like she was her calmest self. And just one more thing to add to this, she has a sibling whom she's very jealous about. Like I think the thing that you were talking about a few minutes ago, chronic resentment, she may have that. And sometimes she'll say things like she hates her sister and will never forgive the things that she did to her. And unfortunately, the younger one is a handful too. She's still very impulsive and will step into the other one's boundaries. So that's where we are right now.
Okay. So we have a sibling issue, and we also have an anxiety, specifically a social anxiety issue. It's certainly true that 11-year-old girls are classically, explosive wouldn't be the right word, but mood swings. That is certainly true. And, puberty's getting earlier. On the other hand, she's not even 10, and she was very calm during COVID. So I'm going to say this is probably social anxiety that's making her swing like this. I don't know for sure, but that's what be my bet. And so when she says, I'm gonna, I'm having to wear this boot, it's going to draw attention, what do you say?
Well, so not with the boot, but with the backpack, we had a more depth discussion. And I tried to explain to her, like, people may not even notice. That's like in her head that people are going to think about her and, why she did that and, all that. But people may not even notice.
So that's the normal response of a parent who's trying to help her child not feel anxious. I'm going to give you a different response. Okay.
Okay.
That's what we all want to say. It's like, no one's paying any attention to you, sweetheart. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the backpack. Don't worry about the boot. We all want to say that.
Yeah. So, in the past, we've talked about things like, you have like your worry brain, and it's, trying to keep you safe. Right. And
yes.
We've had incidences before that we talked about it this way. Maybe I should just remember all that. But I don't know.
Very helpful. The worry brain stuff is very helpful. And I would start with empathizing, I wish your new backpack was here already. I hear you. If you change backpacks when the new one comes, you're going to want to use it because it's going to be great and new, but you might feel a little self-conscious, like, what if somebody notices? And that I hear you, that would make you worried. Is that right? So you're acknowledging, you're restating what she said, you're acknowledging it. She'll be like, yeah, she'll elaborate on it. Are you kidding? They're going to stare at me. Everybody's going to notice. They're going to talk about it. They're going to make fun of me. They're going to make comments, whatever she says. They're going to, and you say, wow, that would feel really uncomfortable if that happened, wouldn't it? Yeah, I hear you. That feels sort of not worth it to you. Like, we're using the new backpack might not feel worth it. Wow. I guess it would feel pretty uncomfortable if somebody made a comment, huh? Does it feel like that would be hard to handle? Well, Mom, if people were looking at you, it would be hard to handle. I mean, she could be really annoyed at you about this and be like, of course it's hard to handle, right? And you could say, yeah, I don't like people staring at me and making comments behind my back. And I wonder if that happened, what you could do to handle it. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to have the new backpack. I understand that choice. And you know, you don't have to decide now. You can decide when it gets here. And if that's what you decide, that you're in charge of your own backpack, right? Because the backpack is like, it's like what they wear the first day of school. It's sort of a big deal in their self-identification, right? It's like the cell phone case or something, you know, it's like an extension of, but you've started the conversation where she's allowed to actually tell you about it. And you've suggested, and if she'll let you suggest more, you can suggest more. I wonder what it would feel like if that happened. I wonder how you could handle it. I couldn't handle it, she might say, or she might say nothing. That'd be great. If she said nothing, it means she's thinking about it, right? She might be like, and she might, and then it'll come up again and you'll say, yeah, it could feel uncomfortable. It could feel uncomfortable. Are there ways you can help yourself if you feel uncomfortable so that you feel better? I mean, what we're not trying to remove from our children's lives any feeling of discomfort. We're trying to help acknowledge that they're going to feel uncomfortable with the boot and people staring at them. And is there a way they can handle it? And actually, as they go through those experiences and learn that they can handle it. I mean, the truth is, that's what fear is, right? Fear is thinking we can't handle something, right? And so we're scared in advance about it.
Exactly.
But she will handle the boot. She went today to school and she's handling the boot somehow. And our job as the parent is to make, to affirm, you handled that. How was it with the boot today? Oh, it was no big deal, she might say. Or she might say, oh my God, it was so terrible. Whatever she says, it doesn't matter. Whatever she says, you affirm, like, wow, tell me about it. And then she's like, well, nobody really noticed. I mean, in the beginning, my teacher said, what happened to you? And I had to tell the whole class and I wanted to shrink in my desk, but nobody even paid any attention or whatever she'll say. And you can say, wow, so you handled it. You handled it. And she'll look at you like, duh, of course, you know, like she'll like, what are you talking about? And you'll say, you know, it sounds like it was uncomfortable for a little bit, but you managed it. And I'm really proud of you that you handled it. You were brave and you went to school with the boot and you handled it. Good for you. That took some courage. You're speaking to the ways she's exhibiting courage in her life. And when her backpack comes, she's not exhibiting fear if she doesn't use it. She's deciding that she's not going to do that right now. Let's say she doesn't want to use it right now. And you say, when you're ready, you can do it. When you're ready, you can do the backpack. And if you want some help to come up with something to say to kids, if they say anything like, oh, new backpack, then I could help you come up with things. And she might be like, well, what do you mean? You could say, well, you could say, I got it as a present for you when I was out of town. You could say, you got it for Christmas. You could say, we could brainstorm. You could say, it dropped out of the sky onto your front porch. Who knows? You know, we could come up with some fun things. And you don't have to use it if you don't want to. It's totally up to you. When you feel like you could handle the discomfort, if anybody said anything, then you'll be ready and you can do it when you're ready to tackle that. How does this sound?
Oh, that's a very freeing conversation. Like to be able to say that to her. I mean, that's wonderful. And thanks for the reminder about the empathy step. Like, I know I have to do it, but I feel like sometimes I'm having a hard time. And especially with her sister too. I feel, I mean, this should not have happened. You shouldn't have, you know, bothered by her doing it. So the empathy step, I know I'm missing. So thanks for that reminder.
Well, it also will help with the sibling thing. I didn't address that at all. But when there's an entrenched chip on the shoulder, resentment, the way we melt that, it's basically a four-pronged approach. One is you strengthen your relationship with her so that she's not threatened by the sister. Two is you help her with the feelings that she's carrying around toward her sister. And that means you start with the empathy. When she says about her sister, you say, I hear you. It's hard to be a big sister sometimes. You don't know the half of it. I hear you. It's not what you know, you wish your sister would not get into your things. I totally understand. And then she says, I don't even want a sister. And you say, I hear you that sometimes you don't even feel like you want a sister. This is not the moment to say,
Mhm.
of course you want your sister. This is
Mhm.
the moment to acknowledge that sometimes she feels this way. I mean, at some point, you're also going to say, when she says, well, can we get rid of her? You're going to say, actually, she's staying here. I'm her mom too. And she might even cry. If you've done enough empathy, she might even cry at that moment. And that would be very healing for her, actually,
Yes.
to cry about that loss, that she's not the only one, the only child and the only daughter of yours at this moment, right? That there's another daughter who came along and shoved her aside. So the empathy is the first step of, really opening up those feelings for her. There is another step, which is about building their relationship with each other. And that's an important one to do, to try to help them to get along in any ways they can. And then there's the step of how you actually handle the problem areas. So one thing you do have to do is protect her and her stuff. If her sister's getting into her stuff, you need to brainstorm with her how to protect her stuff. If they're having fights with each other, you want to intervene in the conflict in a way that doesn't create more sibling rivalry, right? But that actually settles down the sibling rivalry and they both feel heard. And like they're both getting a solution.
Yeah,
So
and if I could respond to that, yeah, one of the problems that we are having is like we put her Barbies up on the shelf, the highest shelf in the room, and the almost 5-year-old pulls a chair, puts a stool on it, and puts pillows on it. Like I never thought she would do that. So the younger one is also hard to set limits with. So
the older child does need some way to keep her stuff safe. So if the agreement is that no one touches the Barbies that are hers without permission, those are her Barbies, then she might even need a safe. I know it sounds crazy, but if they're sharing a room and she can get into her stuff, she might need a safe. So I'm just saying that we need to if we want the sibling rivalry to diminish, the actual problems we actually need to take seriously, and we need to intervene in a way that helps both kids. Yeah.
yes,
And
definitely.
we're going to do a sibling unit. People have been asking me the whole time with the membership to do a sibling unit. And I've been a little hesitant because some people only have one child, but more people have more than one child. And what I decided to do is we're going to do 2 workshops. We don't usually, many spotlights, we do no workshops, and some of them we do 1 workshop. We're going to do 2 workshops in the sibling unit. One is going to be just siblings, and one is going to be for only children, so that people can ask their questions if they have just one child. And there are a couple of other things we'll be doing, including a couple of printables. And one of the printables will be how to melt the chip on the shoulder. I'm working on that one right now.
I'm
So
excited about that.
yeah. Good. So
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Sure. So just so everybody knows timing wise, because sometimes people ask, we're wrapping up the school one. We're going to do the homeschooling audio, and then that's it. And we're going to do resilience then. And then we're going to do siblings, and that finishes out the year. Okay. Sibling. So Danielle is asking when the sibling unit is going to happen, and it's going to happen in November to close out our year. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for these great questions today. Wonderful questions. And thank you for the support. I haven't been able to read the chat. I always look forward to reading it later, but thank you for the support you've given each other in the chat. This is such a wonderful group, so supportive of each other. And thank you for the hard work you're doing with your kids every single day in your home. And I will see you next month. Have a wonderful month. Bye-bye, everybody. Unmute yourself to say goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.